Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabados of Delmer, together with my co-host, Mark Ronich of jbiztechvalley.com and Statewide News Service.
Well, Rabbi, education is very important in the Jewish culture. And, we have the Albany School Superintendent with us today, Dr. V. And we're very happy to have you here. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
I thought, Mark, you were here maybe to get another degree.
Yeah, my high school diploma. No, actually. How are things going in the Albany schools?
Excellent.
Really?
Thanks for asking. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Our enrollment is up, and our kids are staying, our families are staying. We're over 9,000 kids at this point, and so that's good news.
What was it last year?
8,000, a little bit under, 8,005, 8,006.
So that's been tremendous growth.
It is, and part of it is because we do have a large group of new immigrants coming to this country, and they're choosing Albany for their home, and so we're excited about that.
Are they difficult to educate, though? I mean, you have a kid coming in at 10 years old, doesn't know English, maybe?
Well, it doesn't know English and doesn't know their own home languages. Well, unfortunately, for many of the students that we're seeing, they've been in refugee life for a long time. And so whether you know your home language, English language, or the language of the people who are taking care of you, supposedly, it's a difficult task. Is it difficult? Yes, it's difficult. Is it work we can do? It's work we can do. But we've got a lot of partners, like Refugee Services, that assists us. We've got translators that come and help us. And our families are eager to come to the United States and have a better life for themselves.
There's a downside, because I told you that once I talked to someone in New York City schools, a religious person, but they just a public school teacher, and they were saying that a good few years ago, New York City schools aren't so good. He says, well, the numbers drag you down, because if you have, let's say, a refugee and they're taking in maybe the Common Core or a test at the end of the year, oh, you don't know anything. So it looks like the teacher is terrible. Yeah, you're terrible. Look at this kid, he doesn't know anything. Well, why don't you qualify it? He just came into school 10 months ago. How do you expect him to be at a 5th grade level? It's not our fault.
That's an argument that all of us make, and it's one of the flaws in the system, the educational system. And that's one of the things that I know that the governor and others are tackling around evaluation. And around testing, and testing is a 4-letter word, and it is difficult. And at the same time, I have a moral obligation, a legal obligation to provide the best education I can for all students, regardless of how they come in the door. My job is to make sure that they're successful. So yes, it does take additional resources. Yes, we do have to have more partners to do it. And yet at the same time, I have to provide that service for the children and families.
So are there well, first of all, these immigrant students who are coming in, are they from the African continent, or are they from, where are they immigrants from?
We have children from all over the world, obviously. And at the same time, right now, it appears that we're getting a lot of students from the Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Burma, in that area. And so that's a new land for us to explore. And so our students are coming with remarkably different experiences.
Because, I don't mean this in a negative way, but I have to ask the question about, are any of the students coming from the Ebola-stricken countries, and are you testing students before they, for health, on a health level, are you testing them?
We are not required to do that testing. This, obviously, when they enter the country, there's a medical piece that they have to go through before they can enter. We are not the ones that do that work. That's with the Center for Disease Control, CDC, and that group. So yes, they do have to be tested, but they're not coming from those places.
They're not, okay. So I presume that some of the other students that are coming into the Albany schools are not just immigrants, but they're also coming in from charter schools that are closing.
Sure.
So tell us what that dynamic is like. Are you feeling like, oh, these charter schools, look at what they did. They had their chance, now they're failing, now we got to bring the students back in, or?
Well, for me, the charter school kids, most of them are my kids anyway. They live in Albany, and they grew up in Albany, and they're going to school. Their parents made a different choice. So the children come and go between our schools all the time. That is a constant flux that happens continuously. Potential for a charter school to close does cause a different conversation with a sudden influx of 100, 200, 300 students. Yes, that's a different conversation. But we're also getting fully prepared for that if the governing bodies of these charters make those decisions. So we have a plan of action in place right now, where and how we're going to help these students come back into our school and be successful.
So maybe some people are coming into the middle of the story, but are there charter schools have closed already?
Charter schools have closed already in the past, but this year it was just announced that potentially 2 of the middle schools would close. That decision has not been made yet, but we still have to plan ahead of time.
Oh, I see. So that's where the 300 students would
Correct.
come from, the middle school.
Correct.
And then they would go to Hackett Middle School? Or?
Depending on how we organize our schools for learning. Both our middle schools are pretty full, and so we've got to talk about different ways in which we're going to
So
move
Hackett
children.
and Livingston, or Hackett?
Livingston is no longer our
Right,
building, so
okay.
Hackett and Myers are both have
Myers.
approximately 670 kids in them already, and so making room for 300 more is the task. at hand.
Challenging, huh?
Absolutely.
Maybe you'll have to cover over the pool in Myers and use that as
You know,
classrooms.
That's it.
Dr. V, last time I talked to you about, like the dropout rate in the high school, and it says, well, maybe, not every kid is out for trigonometry or chemistry, which are very difficult subjects. But then I was talking to some Albany High kids, and they say there aren't subjects, I don't remember all, like photography or even wood shop. I forgot exactly which they are, but just your blue collar labor. But the old joke is a plumber makes more than a doctor
That's
anyway.
right, that's
so
right.
there's nothing demeaning. I don't mean
Absolutely.
anything demeaning at all. On the contrary, I think more kids should go into these trades and get
Agreed.
college degrees and come out with nothing, or with a lot of debt. That's what they come out with. But so tell us about the programs, if you're familiar with them in the high school that are, not just your
That are
college
vocational. You're talking about
vocational,
vocational.
yeah.
Well, and as you both already know, we hope to go to the voters in December to vote for a referendum. So we have a new high school. One of the things that's important for me is that career tech component goes in directly into the high school. Right now it's a separate building. And so we have programs there, electricians and beauticians and woodworking. We have those programs, but I'm arguing like you are in that I expect our high school students to graduate with a minimum of 6 college credits and or an associate's degree. It's being done all over the country. And so for me, putting that Voc Tech, as you called it, into the building with those high-end jobs that the county needs right now is very important to me. And so we have a building designed to allow us to do that. We're hoping the voters will say yes to that, and we embed those right into the building.
Where would be the new building?
In the same site, it's the only piece of land that I have.
Washington Avenue.
Washington Avenue.
Wouldn't someone said a year or two ago that they were going to move on the Harriman campus? That was it.
That was before my time,
really?
and before I was here, but
You know about that, Mark?
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
but
that's not a
not a
possibility.
possibility.
And the people in the surrounding homes surrounding the Harriman campus don't want them don't want a school there because the bus traffic and the increased car traffic.
So it's
and
off the table.
It's
Yes.
pretty much is. So when you say that the new high school is going to be on the same Washington Avenue spot, are you talking about leveling that and then building new?
no, right now we have a renovation plan in place so that we will be renovating and doing new simultaneously so that kids can continue to go to school while we do that construction.
Well, that's a lot of what they did in Bethlehem recently also is when they rehabbed a lot of the schools.
Correct.
How long is that going to take to?
Well,
Because I think in the summer you have more time
absolutely.
because it's pretty much, it might be closed or very little bit of the school is being used, so I would think.
Well, as I learn more and more about New York, and it won't surprise you, there's an awful lot of red tape one must go through before you even get to a shovel. And so by the time the red tape is finished, we're talking about 2 years before the shovel's in the ground. And after that, it's anywhere between 5 and 7 years before the whole thing would be
Right.
phased and completed. So it takes a long time. We're not a private sector company, we're a public, so
Yeah.
you have to do that with public dollars.
Okay, well, somehow Bethlehem didn't take 10 years.
Well, I'm
and
hoping that we don't have to, too.
So I'm hoping that maybe you could learn from them. And do you talk to your counterpart
sure.
in Bethlehem?
Absolutely.
Because Tom Douglas, is it?
Dr. Douglas.
Dr.
Yes,
Douglas?
yes.
Okay. So you get along well and you can learn
I
things?
play nice in the sandbox with everybody.
Okay. So that's the charter school issue also is you'd have to expand the high school also because you'd have this influx of middle school students quickly going into the high school too.
I'm not sure. We're still working our demographic study. I'm not sure how long. I know right now we're on an increase, and right now it's projected to stay that way until about 2017, 2018. After that, it appears as if there would be a decline. So I'm not sure if the charter school will have a great influence on the high school as it's currently designed.
All right. Well, let me ask you about, I went to a high school in Brooklyn, Lafayette High School, where the show Welcome Back, Kotter is based on that high school. We had
And
a
you
lot.
were,
I was Juan Epstein.
you were who?
Juan Epstein. I was the Puerto Rican Jew that played jokes on everyone.
I bet.
And I turned out okay. I
Yeah,
think.
you did.
And so we had students on the 6-year plan, high school 6-year plan.
Okay.
Do you have students who are on the 6-year plan at Albany High?
And what does that mean?
That means that they are super seniors. That
Oh,
super
they're able to
seniors,
stay.
That they couldn't complete their coursework. They was in my case, I was in 9th grade taking algebra with 12th graders. So I was just wondering if you have kids where you're not pushing them out into the street or the college because they're not going to be prepared for college, and then you're going to have college professors and chairmen all upset that look at what they're graduating, and it's
Correct.
not going to be a good result for Albany school district image. Do you have do you have students who have to stay for?
We have students that elect to do so, and it is something that I would certainly advocate for. I can provide an education until a student is 21. If you wanted to stay that long, you can. We know that social mores would say you got to get out in 4. I know I'm penalized if I keep kids longer through the state education department and how they grade us as a building. So I would not hit my 4-year graduation rate. And that's one of the flaws in the system. Because in my opinion, if a student comes into 9th grade and they're still about 2 years behind, then why not allow them to have those additional 2 years, as you said, to complete? And why would that not be sufficient as completing on time for that individual student? The system isn't designed to work that way. It's 4 years and go. And that's a social more, right? Graduate in 4 years, go someplace else. I don't agree with that, but it is a system, and that's how the system is designed.
It seemed like those super seniors really stuck together in my high school.
Oh, I'm sure they did.
And because they had this bond,
Yeah.
that they were all stupid, or they learn. Everyone learns at a different level, at a
Absolutely.
different speed,
And that
it's
the system doesn't allow for that, and that's the problem.
And that was what the problem was with the Common Core, is that it was one exam and everyone was expected to take the exam all at the same time. It wasn't personalized, I guess.
The Common Core are the standards for which we expect students to learn.
Yeah.
The test itself
Right.
is not flexible.
Right.
Common Core is flexible.
Okay.
The test is not,
Testing
and
is
you're
not.
right about that.
Yeah.
So every 4th grader must know how to do these things right now in 4th grade, at this date, at this time, in this space. And it doesn't allow for that flexibility for student growth.
I always felt that with Judas. I did go through the public schools, even though it was Chicago, and it was an excellent education. But just I felt that it goes both ways. I mean, kids can excel, and I
That's
could do
right.
better math. There's this
That's
is the curriculum. I figured it out already. Let's go.
That's right.
So I don't know, in the Jewish way, which then I went into the Jewish education, where there's more individualized. And I know one person actually that got his PhD in Buffalo, and he used as his thesis, doctoral thesis, the yeshiva way, with the Torah way, which people learn pretty much on an individual basis. A little bit later, you can't do it at 1st grade, but then they even had, as you're saying, and not in people that they're older and, like you say, a little bit dumber. On the other hand, they make people here's a 16-year-old, and maybe he's not up to class, but why don't you help out the 8-year-olds? And they, again, they just don't do that. And it's different buildings,
Right.
and they do that. And you should have a system where the kids say, yeah, no, I can help the 8th grader and make them feel like, well, I'm not up to my peers, but I'm better. So there's a lot of things, that's what I'm saying, and people have written it up about the Torah system. But like you say, the system, your hands are shackled, I'm sure, from
Well,
can't
they
just
are,
do what
but-
you want.
But we can decide as a culture here in Albany that we're going to be different. I mean, the State Department can ding me for whatever requirements I have to meet, but we can decide as a city that it's okay for your senior to be a 6-year senior and they're working on their associate's degree.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you rather I pay for that?
Well, because you do have,
With my college partners, right? I can save parents money.
and
You
you do have this cooperation with SUNY Albany, don't you still?
Oh, yeah. SUNY
Okay.
Albany, HVCC, Schenectady Community College.
No, but isn't there
Sage,
but
all of
isn't
them.
there a specific program that was started
have them.
with U Albany?
Correct.
They made this big deal about it. I
Correct.
forgot what it's called.
Correct. We have Nano High.
Right.
Nano High is at U Albany, or at the College of Nanoscale and Engineering,
Right.
so that is still there. We also have, of course, 2 or 3 different universities offering college credits and college courses on site all the time.
okay.
And I'm just seeking to expand that and give it better
Sure.
density, so that our students, especially those that, if you don't have something to do in the evening, I'd much rather you come back to the high school and take that evening college course than go home and watch television.
Exactly.
And so we're trying to create that flexibility
Right.
with our high school campus for more.
I just
more
see,
student
it's
engagement.
the dichotomy. It's interesting when I'm just sitting here because I do live in Bethlehem, but kids don't go to Bethlehem Public School. They go to the Maimonides Day School. But people, in Bethlehem, we have a better high school. But then there's Jewish kids who are going to, and Orthodox Jewish kids going to Albany High, and they come out and I know these kids, and they're going to the best colleges.
Yeah.
So it's interesting where I'm just saying, your position as a school, you have to deal with kids like we're saying you need vocational, you can't make it. On the other hand, you do have a group, I don't know how many, but I know that there's exceptional
Absolutely.
students that are going to exceptional colleges from Albany High, so you got to deal with both. Like I
Absolutely.
say, the smartest kids and kids
Absolutely.
on both ends of the spectrum.
Absolutely. And I wouldn't want it any other way. I mean,
Right.
that's part of the joy of being in education, is to be able to light the light in all those cases.
I'd like to talk to you about the budget. What is the size of the Albany city budget, school budget?
Approximately 225 million,
Okay.
and then we have about 25 million in grants.
Great, wow.
We have a good
So-
grant writer, right?
And I won't steal her away.
Thank you.
Or him, whatever. But is that enough? Or are you finding it tight? Or, I mean, we can always use more, right?
Yeah,
But
right.
I'm just asking, I mean, are you, you got to have this cap and all this stuff. If you had your druthers, what would the school budget be so that you can hire as many teachers as you could? I mean, there's only so much space for classes, but I'm sure you can.
I'm sure I could figure that
Right.
part out, right? If I had my druthers, the state would be able to fund as they were supposed to for public education, and we know that's not happening, and we know there's not a lot of arguments about that. What I would do with that money would be extend time during the day. I think for many of our students, because they are 2 years behind, they need more time. So I'd extend the day and I would extend the year. Although this year we're going almost to the end of June, so I might take that one back.
So
But
what
but
would
the
that
extent-
budget be? How much would that
well,
budget
you would
be?
have to pay staff, right? If I'm going to do that in all buildings and extend the day, then that's going to mean an increase in staff costs, whether it be benefits, whether it be salary, custodial, support staff, et cetera.
Right. So another 200 million, another 100 million?
I don't think it would be 200 million, but I bet we'd be pretty close to the mid 50 million. I bet it'd be close to
Yeah.
50 million,
Now,
at
this
least.
gap elimination adjustment, does that help you in the schools?
It helps at the moment, but that's about to become a point of dissension, I think, within the legislature.
Right.
I'm not clear yet.
No, but it could
Decide
be
full on.
a little bit of a bump,
Could be a
or is it
little
a
bump.
one-shot? Is it a one-shot, or? You don't know?
I don't
Okay,
know that
fine.
one because
Okay.
I don't know New York well enough yet to know
Okay.
that one.
All right, all right.
But right now, it appears as if it would be a bump.
Okay, so explain to me about this cap that I mentioned, because you stayed under the 2%
Correct.
for what, 2 years now?
No, I think this was the first year.
This is the first year?
Correct.
Okay. So, but it's not really, I mean, there's all these different sectors of the budget.
Yes.
It's a very complicated budget
Yes.
when you say 225 million, it's just not all one lump.
No,
So-
absolutely not.
So this 2% is not really a 2% cap, but it's a 2% cap in one of the sectors.
Correct.
Okay.
You've got it. It's not a 2% cap, and there's a magical formula behind the curtain that no one knows about, and school districts are forced to work under that cap to the best of their ability.
And what is that, can you name some of the categories that
I
you have
can't.
to? Okay, fine. I
But-
can't either,
yeah.
and I tried, and I don't
Yes.
blame you for that. What's this equity issue that's going on in the school system?
Well, I think there's a couple things happening, and you won't be surprised given the history of Albany. We're a racially segregated city. We're an economically divided city. We were built that way, and we're living that way. And it manifests in student behavior, and it manifests in different cultural expectations. And so between all of those things, our children continue to try on words and language that hurt, and we're trying to help them use words and language that heals. And as a result of that, we've had a couple of different incidences where newcomer students are meeting up with students of color, and there's a cultural clash that occurs. We're studying a lot about social media and our students' use of texts and tweets and things like that, and related to cyberbullying. That is not new for anyone else in the country, but it's not new for Albany, but one that we're really going to begin to tackle and address. The board has made a commitment to that, and so it will include conversations within the school district with our kids and our families and our administration, our teachers, but it will also include and expand a conversation in the city. And I know that the mayor is going to come forward with an equity agenda pretty soon, and we're looking forward to partnering with her on that.
And how does that relate within the special ed segment of the population?
Our school district has been noted by special education. We have a disproportionate student body, black and brown students that are being suspended out of special education. So they're special education students that are overrepresented in suspension. And so we right now are going through getting some technical assistance from the university in New York. They're coming here. They're helping us talk about how are we going to manage this and do this better and differently. Because I will always argue that any issue we have in special education is a general education
What
problem.
does it mean suspended? Meaning
Suspended meaning you've done something and you're out for 3 days or out
yeah,
for
but
2
if they're
days.
special ed, that's what means that they're having troubles by definition.
Which means why would you suspend them if it's a part of, there's other things we could do instead of suspending to ameliorate that behavioral issue.
Well, that's what I would think.
It-
Yeah, that's
You read
what
my
I'm
mind.
saying. Yeah.
That's,
So-
that's
Well,
it
what I'm
exactly.
saying. You're dealing with difficult children, from the get-go. So
Correct. But there are things we could do differently
Really.
than saying.
Get out.
Yeah, exactly.
Is there we have a lot of people on here, the sheriffs from the various counties around
Sure.
here, and law enforcement officials in general, and everyone keeps talking to us about drugs and heroin, and how marijuana is a gateway drug. And here we, legalized medical marijuana, and it's really strict. I mean, we have morphine that's given at the end of life, and that's restricted only in hospitals.
That's right.
So this medical marijuana is going to be restricted in a similar way. What's the situation with drugs in the Albany School District?
Well, I think as a city, I can't speak to how prolific it is. The drug of choice that it appears to me is cigarettes and marijuana for our students.
Tobacco
They're
cigarettes.
testing like the rest of us might have done in our younger day, and they're doing the same thing. So for me, I'm not hearing about marijuana internally. as much as I hear about marijuana.
You're not hearing about
Heroin
as much
internally,
as
as much as I hear about marijuana.
And what is there a remedy, or is it just something that you need to just sort of manage and cope with?
I think we continue to work with children and families and continue to keep working through that. Part of the issue is my generation doesn't think marijuana does anything.
That's right.
Right? It's not, it's not a drug.
People want to legalize it. They think it's normal.
Exactly. So we're fighting against a group of folks in my generation that just think that's okay. And here I am saying, no, that's not okay. It's a cultural shift that we're going to have to
So
work
I'm
on.
taking you never experimented with marijuana.
I did not, actually. I did not.
Okay. Well, it's a temptation.
It was a temptation,
like
but
you're
no, I
talking
did not.
about this peer pressure and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's very, that's one of the things that, you get sort of an outcast,
That's right.
image, so.
I didn't mind being an outcast. It's
For
fine
that
with me.
regard.
Well, look where you're now. You're
Yeah,
superintendent
now
of
look at me.
Albany.
And look at where they are, right? Okay. Do you have anything else to report to us about the drug issue in the Albany School District? I mean, is there?
No, I'm sure for our students outside of school, they would claim that it's prevalent and that's their lives and what they're doing outside. What I would report to you is that on the inside that we have less and less actions around that, and I'm
They're
feeling good
counseling.
about the way.
You could maybe I'm sure a teacher that's acquainted. I could see also someone comes over to me and they're out of it.
Absolutely.
Stoned, and hey, go to a counselor.
Yeah.
Just way that would be maybe
Correct.
I wanted to ask you mentioned earlier about the city of Albany being a racially segregated city.
Mm-hmm.
Did I hear that right?
Correct.
In what way? Because I don't necessarily see, I live up by Hackett and Manning and, that's sort of interracial. I don't know. I know the South End and Arbor Hill and West Hill.
There we go. And
That's
I
what
also
you're
knew about
referring to.
Arbor Hill, West Hill, and South End before I interviewed. And I asked everybody, why is it that I knew about those neighborhoods before I got here?
Oh.
And when you start to study the city, then you look at racial isolation and the influence of economic deprivation. So I would argue that the city is racially and economically segregated.
All right. Now, there's a bridge on Henry Johnson Boulevard that, once you cross that bridge, you know that you're in a different neighborhood.
Correct.
Just by the way the look of that part of the city is.
Correct.
I just, I come from Brooklyn. I think the worst neighborhood here is still better than the.
Oh, I didn't give it a value.
No, I
didn't give it a
understand.
value.
I'm the one doing
Yeah,
that,
I can give it a value.
and I'm doing that,
Yep.
and I've said this a lot of times to a lot of people who sat in your seat. I just think that Albany has what they consider crime is,
Absolutely.
just not to the level of what it is in other cities. So that's
absolutely.
what I'm.
And I'm from. My last stop was Paterson, New Jersey, and you have nothing on Patterson. we're doing just fine.
So you like it here in the city of
yeah,
Albany?
I
Have you
do.
been here, how many years?
This is now my third year.
Okay.
Starting my third year.
And many more years ahead, you
I hope so.
Okay.
I hope so. I want my daughter to graduate at Falcon if I have my way.
Oh,
so.
good.
Yeah.
And what's your time? How's the board doing? Do you
They're
have
good.
new board members?
Absolutely. It's January, so they start over again in January, and we just had a new election. And
Who's
so,
the president? Is Rose Brandon
Ginny Farrell is president. Rose is still on the board, but it's
Okay.
a new year, and so we have a new president, and
Wow.
so I'm excited about
Very
continuing
nice.
working
Well,
with
Ginny
them.
Farrell, we should tell everyone, works for Assemblywoman Pat Fahey
That's right.
as her maybe scheduler or whatever. But an important person in the office
Correct.
there. And,
So the board is a part-time volunteer job.
Board is a volunteer
It's a job.
job, no pay, and a full-time. It's a full-time volunteer job.
So
definitely.
Ginny is really breaking in.
Yeah, I know you have
well,
two jobs.
Well,
Yeah.
I think Pat Fahey was on the board too.
She was board president at one time. yes.
So I think Ginny's following in her mentors'
Could be. Could be.
steps. So
Could be.
that's great for Ginny. So
And it's good for the district. It's good
And
for the
Sue
district.
Adler, who's the only Jewish member on the board,
Correct.
she's still.
Correct, still there.
It's a Jewish view, so I have to ask
That's
that.
right,
Okay.
that's right, still there, still there.
All right.
All
So.
right. All right, thank you
yes.
very much, Dr. V. You came again, and you're doing better work, better than ever, so we'll ask you again in the future.
Thank you.
Continue with the good work that you're doing and do it with good health.
Best of
Thank you.
success to you, yes.
Thank you.